Hello friends and welcome. I'm Sarah Liz and I have one die set that we're going to use 3 different ways. This first card is going to be a Valentine's for my youngest son. I have a birthday card for my stash that I think is fun and funny. Then I have a pop-up Valentine for my older son. All of these are using the new S'mores die set from Pixie Dust Designs. So here's the die set and it is absolutely huge. We have a campfire, smoke tendrils, hearts, 3 different sign options, and some s'mores. I've cut it 3 times. I have a purple glitter blue, some red, orange, and yellow, and then I have a set with just a bunch of s'mores. And we're gonna go through sort of the quick and easy cards first, and then we'll move on to the pop-up card that I think is surprisingly easy. I also have a mini kit to show you. I've shown it once before, also using this die set for an exploding light up martini glass, if you saw that video. So I will make sure to link to that one in case you're interested in the free printable as well. I will also link to last year's Valentine's emergency card kit because we're going to use one of those sentiments also. So I'm beginning here by adding my smoke tendrils to the shadow layer. I've cut them from a pattern paper that has a really subtle yellow polka dot pattern, and I'm adding this onto the shadow layer that also has room for 4 hearts. If you didn't want to make a Valentine's Day card with this set, you could absolutely skip the shadow layer and just do the smoke tendrils, but I kind of like here that it's showing me where I'm supposed to put those hearts because I'm not always the best at figuring out where everything goes. I'm adding those and some red glitter cardstock just into those openings. There's a little bit of wiggle room on where you put the larger ones and where you put the smaller ones, not a huge deal. Then I'm going to layer everything onto this really subtle pale orange pattern paper. This is from a waffle flower grab bag that I got. I will try to link the paper if it's still available. I'm not sure if it is. I'm going to hold the largest flame and then the shadow layer together as I go to lay this onto my card panel because they're going to fill the entire thing. I've cut that shadow layer down to 4 by 5 1/4, so I get some of that red from my other panel peeking out from behind it, just 1/8 of an inch all the way around. There are dies to cut out some like wood logs for the base of your bonfire. If you were making a 5 by 7, I would absolutely add them. I think it's super fun. Here, I just felt like it looked a little bit squished. It'll fit on an A2, but I would not maybe cut down this panel at all if I was going to do that. Then I have a shimmery orange cardstock from my Your Paper Insider box, and then I've used that same yellow pattern paper with the polka dot for the top layer. I'm going to use some thin foam, like 1mm foam, to pop up that panel, add a little bit of wet glue, and add this onto my card base. Because the layering around the outside is just 1/8 of an inch, that wet glue gives me a little bit of wiggle room to make sure that I get it centered. So these are Malcolm's sentiments, my son's choice sentiments from last year. It says, "Happy Valentine's Day, you are totally awesome." But I actually just want the "you are totally awesome." So I trimmed that out into a tiny rectangle, and I'm going to add that onto a scrap of red cardstock that matches my card base. And then I'll use my trimmer to trim around that. I am not measuring, my friends. I can be kind of mathy when I want to, but if I don't have to, I'm not gonna. I just go and try to line it up on 2 sides and then trim. And then for that 3rd and 4th side, I just go very slowly and cut off little slivers until I think it looks right. I am shimming a little bit onto this piece. It's going to go right over the top of the right-hand tendril of smoke. And so I have a piece of cardstock just in the middle and some 1mm thin foam squares on either side. So it's going to be flat across and not kind of wonky with like a hump in the middle or a saggy middle. Nobody wants that. And that, my friends, is almost the card complete. I'll add it onto my card base and move on to card number 2. I love this for my youngest son. His favorite color is red. Lately, he has also decided yellow and orange are great. This is so far outside my color comfort zone that I just really wanted to make it for him in a way that I thought he would love. So here's card number 2. Happy birthday. You are becoming a serious fire hazard. I have a card panel that is 3.5 by 6.25. And then this light blue piece I'm adding is 3 by 6.25. I'm actually going to cover it up. I should have done something to it before I added it to the card, and I didn't. And later I'm going to change my mind. Then I'm going to add this onto my card base that is 7 by 6.25, scored in half at 3.5. And I will add my card panel onto my card base. Normally I wait till the end. I don't know why I didn't. So I will add some like mint tape on the inside just to hold that closed later on when I go to start adding other pieces. I want to make sure it's going to lay flat. So here are the s'mores. I love these, you guys. I have cut 2 of the marshmallow pieces, and I'm using cappuccino ink from Simon Says Stamp just to add that charred kind of look and feel to the top and bottom. And then I have 6 of these graham cracker pieces, and I will add that same ink on there just to bring out the debossed details. This is from Emergency Kit number 9, Sue's Sassy Birthday Sentiments. And that happy birthday on the top right fits perfectly inside the marshmallow die. So I am going to just tape that on there, and then I'll kind of trim around it and run it through my die cutting machine. And I'm going to double check and make sure everything fits. And then I'm good to go. I'm adding that same cappuccino ink, just a little bit of that char, slightly less. I didn't want to darken up the sentiment too much. Then I will just start assembly line putting together my s'mores. The marshmallows I'm adding right onto the graham cracker, and I just line up the bottom of it with the debossed line towards the bottom. It's sort of the difference between the side of the graham cracker and the top of the graham cracker. And then for 2 of them, I can add the glue right onto the marshmallow. I prefer that so I don't accidentally end up with glue hanging out the back that's not adhered to anything. But for the middle one, I wanted to make sure I wasn't going to cover up my sentiment or too much of my sentiment. It's like these were made to go together. It hangs down a little bit more on the right side than on the left, where that happy is on the left, but on the right, I've got room. This way, I know that it's going to fit just fine. I'm working on top of my Waffle Flower mini stencil mat, because then if there is glue that oozes out in the back or isn't covered up by cardstock, I can just let it dry and peel that off super easily. Then for the graham crackers on the top, it's easiest for me to just add a line of glue to the bottom. The rest of that graham cracker is just sort of hanging out, free floating behind it. You could assemble these directly onto the card, but I wasn't quite sure how I wanted them arranged. So this made the most sense to me at the time. Once I get all of those lined up and ready to go, we can move on to our background. Here's the background that I created, and it just looks kind of boring. So I'm going to go ahead and bring in a slightly larger piece of cardstock. This one is 3.25 by 6.25 to make sure it's going to cover up all of the initial one. And then I ran that through an embossing folder from Spellbinders. It's one of their really large embossing folders. It's called Peppermint Stripe, but it does not have to be for the holidays. And so I've added some blue ink on with a brayer, and then off camera, I heat set that a little bit because this is my new favorite thing. This is Delicata white shimmer ink, and I'm going to go right over the top of that with a gentle hand in sort of a tapping, swirling motion to add some subtle shimmer. I didn't want to pick up the blue ink with my ink pad, right? It would absolutely contaminate that. So either set it aside to dry for a while or heat set it to make sure that your ink pad is safe. I've added some 1mm thin foam tape. This is the Big Mama foam roll from Simon Says Stamp, and then a little wet glue to make sure I get everything lined up correctly. And I will add that onto my card panel. I'm just trying to make sure I have an equal stripe of that darker teal on the top and the bottom. So I've arranged my s'mores how I think I want them. And in the end, I ended up tilting on the left and the right. I just thought that was a really fun layout, and it's going to frame the sub sentiment that I'll put on the bottom layer. I do have a fair bit of texture, so I'm being a little bit generous with my glue, and I'll just kind of hold on to it for a minute before I move on to the next one. Otherwise, it is likely to move on me as I'm sort of picking up my fingers after placing it down. For my sub sentiment, I am using the Mini Kit Volume 1 Birthday Sub Sentiments. This came out the Friday before Christmas, I want to say. I will link to that. This is completely free for subscribers. And the sub sentiment says you are becoming a serious fire hazard. When I trim it out, it's about 1/4 inch. And then I'm going to layer that on top of a scrap of that dark teal cardstock that is 3/8 of an inch wide. Add some foam tape and line that up in the center below my happy birthday s'mores. I love funny sub-sentiments. You could add this to the inside of a card. You can add it to the front of a card. I love on this one that it's sort of a subtle implication of fire, maybe from birthday candles, maybe from s'mores, who knows. On the first card I showed you in the other video, I used it with an exploding martini glass, the exact same sentiment. You're becoming a serious fire hazard. For a little bit of sparkle and shine, I added silver Twinkle rhinestones. They're clear glitter rhinestones from Trinity stamps, and that finishes up that card. This one is a fun new pop-up something from Pixie Dust Designs. So there are 4 dies in this set. It's called the Standing Pop-Up Card, and it's super, super easy to put together. I got 2 sets from this latest release from Pixie Dust Designs. You guys, I didn't have to snip them apart with my snippers, which is new for them. I don't know if that's what's happening all the time or if that was just this set, but I'm excited about it. So I showed you sort of a prototype that I put together first, but I have cut those pieces from some light blue cardstock. On the left column, the slice in them goes up from the bottom, and on the right, they come down from the top. So you need 1 each of the larger pieces and 2 each of the smaller pieces. And then I find it easiest to just start on one side and begin assembling. The first one is the easiest, but then obviously you have less wiggle room when you go to start adding pieces 2 and 3. So I like for this big one to start in the very center, and I wiggle it about halfway up, and then I start adding the pieces or the slits on either side, and then I push the whole thing together at the same time. On the end, I'm going to start on one side and go about halfway up, and then I'm going to line up the middle slices, and then the third set of slices, again, about halfway up. Once everything's in place, then I push them together. It's so fast and easy. The first time I did it, it was a little bit of like wiggling and figuring out what worked best for me. And now I can put them together pretty simply. I do like to fold it open and closed a few times just to make sure everything kind of pops into place. I'm going to show you 2 different ways to add your pieces to that pop-up die set. Here I have already assembled my whole like flame smoke tendril situation, and I pulled one of the smaller pieces from my prototype, and I used a pencil to trace a line through each of those openings, and I'm just going to cut up those openings with my scissors. This will allow this flame piece to sort of slide and nestle down into that pop-up die. It fits very snugly, right? I thought about not gluing these pieces so that my son could sort of play with it and make his own pop-up arrangements, but some of the other pieces had to be glued. So I'm going to go ahead and glue this one too. I'm only adding glue to the back where it's going to overlap that pop-up, and then I'll slide it on and press it firmly with my fingers back against that piece of the pop-up die. Okay. Then when I start moving on to my s'mores, I've got some options here. I want the one on the right to pop up a little bit. I don't want to lose too much of the s'more. The space in between each of those pieces is about 1 inch. So I cut these scraps of light blue cardstock. Again, it was just a scrap, but they're about 3/4 of an inch wide and 1.5 inches tall. I'm going to figure out where I want the s'more and the angle of it. Then I'll glue it onto that light blue piece, and I'll glue the light blue piece onto my card base. I like doing it this way so that it sort of hides in the base of the card. It doesn't stand out very much. I wouldn't want to put like a little white scrap of cardstock and then it's drawing attention to the mechanism that's holding it onto the card. When I go to add the next piece, I'm going to work on this Valentine lane. There is sort of a signpost and then 3 different sentiments that you can put on that signpost. But if you didn't want to make a Valentine card, grab your favorite stamp set, right? Like it doesn't have to be a Valentine's card. I like s'mores for all kinds of occasions. One of my favorite Pixie Dust sets is the Woodland Critters die set. There's also a Camping Day die set. And the proportions are a little funky when you start mixing and matching those 3 sets, but you can make it really fun and whimsical, right? This bonfire is so much bigger than any of those critters. The s'mores are huge, but I love that idea. It feels sort of cartoony, sort of fun. I am making a Valentine's Day card. I like to make just a giant slew of cards for my 2 boys and my husband, and then I leave them all over the house for them to find with little notes. It usually takes them about a week to find them all, and sometimes a couple of hints. You never know. And so this is just one more that I can add to that. For a sentiment or for like a personal greeting on here, if I felt like it or thought about it at the time, I would have glued a white flame onto the back of that shimmer purple piece, the biggest of the flames, so I could write it there. I didn't. So instead, I'll probably write him a short little note and either tuck it into the envelope if it gets a little long, or I'll punch it out with my 1 3/4 inch punch and then add it onto the back. For the Valentine Lane sign, I felt like the blue was sort of disappearing into the background, so I went ahead and used like a drop shadow out of some black cardstock to make that stand out a little bit more. I didn't want my 2 s'mores to look like they were just mirror images of each other. I wanted to drop the other one down a little bit. So I'm gonna add that one by cutting a little slice into it, and then it lets me vary the layering. You could pop everything up and do all of them with little pieces of cardstock or some acetate if the piece isn't too heavy, but I wanted this to fit in a 6x6 envelope. If you were using shorter pieces, you can fit this into an A2, but I wanted something that was a little bigger, had a little bit more pop. I'm hand delivering, so I don't really care that I'm using a square envelope, but certainly there's lots of ways to go about this. I cut some more of those hearts that I put onto the smoke tendrils, and I added those to the centers of my s'mores and then one kind of up in the bottom of my card. And that will finish up this Valentine's Lane card for my oldest son. So those are our 3 card projects for today. I would love to know which one is your favorite and if you would give this a try if you had that pop-up die set. Thank you so much for spending your time with me, and I will see you next time.